Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flaw podcast.
The following podcast is not relating to my teachings and work at Del Cedar Medical Center and is for entertainment purposes only.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Life of Flaw podcast. And today we're doing something a little different. We are basically doing a recap of the top moments from the past month. We'll be revisiting talks that we have with founders, innovators, educators, touching on themes such as the life story of a company to teaching your kids how to be bilingual, to the effects of tariffs on MedTech. So hope you guys enjoy. Let us know if you like this type of show. We'll do more of them if you do. Vamos.
Welcome and bienvenidos
To another episode of
La Vida del Flow,
the Life of Flaw podcast.
Life of Flow podcast.
Today we have a really cool guest,
Tim Blair,
Dr. Jaafer Golzar,
Dr. Miguel Lichtenberg,
Michelle Bruni, Scott Cool Guy.
You had corporate positions, you had a W-2, you were grinding, you answered to a bunch of people, and in this other phase, you obviously have probably a board and investors that you answer to, and you have a job, but you are an entrepreneur, right? This is your flagship, and you'd obviously want this to do very well. But I want to understand what took you this long to get to this point, because I've heard the saying, you are born an entrepreneur, you will always be an entrepreneur, and some people don't even go to college because they start grinding in their own little businesses and fixing stuff, right? Whoever knows, long-winded way to just say, you did this at a senior point in your career where you were probably in a very good place to stay in places like NAMSA, or to stay in or go back to some VP role with a Boston or a Medtronic, but you opt to do a change. And so I want to know a little bit of that psyche. How was that first part of your career? Was there a bug always in you, or is it more of a very late thing that you're like, you know what, I'm going to just do this and I'm going to take the leap of faith? And I'd love a little bit more of that contextual, personal side in the evolution of your profession.
I think, thanks, Miguel. That's great, because that's something I've talked about with some of my other CEO networks, if you will, is that leap is tough, right? So by way of background, you're exactly right? I could have stayed at a big company, great. You got things like pensions, you got nice 401ks. It's pretty cush. And by the way, the job there at any of those companies was just kind of, as long as you don't screw up, it's a great place to retire. I mean, and I could have easily taken that pathway, right? And it would have been very comfy. Family would have been great. It just wasn't me, Miguel. It was one of those things that I found myself in any company I was with. I was a little bit frustrated, whether it was even angiodynamics, which at the time was very entrepreneurial, fast moving. But we got to a stage where things started to slow down. R&D slowed down. We got new J&J leadership that came at, things just changed. And I just said, man, this is not me. I want to go. I want to move. And so I guess to answer your question, there's always a little bit of a bug there, kind of an entrepreneurial bug, if you will. I thrived in that environment. And I recognized with some of the bigger companies, I didn't thrive very well in bureaucracy. And I found myself frustrated, trying to change things, trying to move things that just weren't going to move. And so, yeah, I think I got to a point in my career where what's great about working for the big companies is you learn a lot. It's a great place to learn. It's a great place to learn how to manage people, how to manage processes. And so I don't think I get there truly on my own. I think having that background and that knowledge and that expertise allowed me to say, you know what? There was a tipping point and the opportunity, and being ready for the opportunity, right? To say, I really love this concept. And we could moonlight a little bit to kind of push it along, but we pushed it far enough and we had enough investment interest to say, you know what, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. And I'm just going to, we jokingly, I use this with Sean Morris and Jeff Elkins and others to say, you just have to have the grapes to do it, because to just do it half-assed, nobody's investing in half-assed. Nobody's investing in hobbies, so it took me taking that leap of faith to say, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to take some risks here. And that was hard to do. But now that we've made that leap for the last couple, I'd say 3 years, we've been full time at this. It's scary, right? But it's also very motivating, because, you're banking on a project. You're hoping things work out well. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of unpredictability, and navigating that is kind of a daily challenge. So, Miguel, I love your question, because it was, there were some tough moments there with the family and discussions to say, I'm gonna leave something very cush, and you've got a wife who's saying, you're gonna do what?
Yeah.
But I did it, and
It's
been
done.
an awesome learning.
It comes at a cost, and it's a bit of a gamble too, right? You don't know. When you have a W-2, you wake up every day and you know that there's a certainty of a paycheck coming your way. And in a way, I think that puts you in this state of, as you said it, of okayness. Other people call it the comfort zone. And guess what? When you are in your comfort zone, your motivation to grow, your motivation to go through any metamorphosis, and pull yourself up is limited.
Yeah. Tim, can you talk about, when you were exploring the idea and all these thoughts and rackets come into your head about the risks, how did you manage that? And like, if you don't mind sharing, like what risks like really took the most energy out of you, and then what was your final mental process to say, you know what, I'm just going to bet on myself and I'm going to make this happen?
Love it, Lucas. So the biggest risk was the risk of payroll, getting paid consistently every, twice a month. The benefits were a big one, right? There were some things that, as we were weighing these decisions, is wow, so I'm going to have to go out and get my family benefits. I'm betting on myself to be able to raise this money to even have a pretty pathetic pay, right? I'm sacrificing some things here for the risk of something bigger and better. I would tell you, Lucas, a big part for me was, you kind of touched on it, Miguel. I wanted to continue to grow, right? I didn't want to be middle to senior management. Like, that to me was just, it wasn't what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to go out and I wanted to make a difference and prove to the world that, I could do these things, right? So it was a little bit of a challenge for myself. And I can tell you out of the gates, there were 6 or 7 months where I didn't take a paycheck. You talk about growth, you talk about urgency. I mean, you think you're prepared as a somebody who saved a lot of money and thought, okay, I'll be okay. I can weather this. Woo, that goes really fast, and it gets very uncomfortable very quickly. And so it forced me to grow, right? It forced me to move, and it really, it tested my belief system. Do you really believe in what you're doing, or do you just go back and hang them up and just go back to industry? And I refused to go there. I believed in what we were doing, and kind of had to fight and navigate my way through it. And I'm a bigger and stronger person for it. I mean, everything you go through, that turmoil, those challenges have certainly added to my growth and added scars to the back and lessons learned. So I'm happy I went through it.
What part of you, when you look back at Tim, at corporate Tim, and when you look now at present Tim, what do you think has changed the most in you?
I would say that, so the depth of growth is certainly part of it, right? Really understanding what it means to be an entrepreneur. I think from a development standpoint, how to navigate difficult situations, right? Truly challenging situations. I guess in the past I've used the word diplomacy, right? That you can't be explosive. You can't fight certain processes and systems. You have to figure out a way to be diplomatic through those processes and to make things move, right? The bull in the china shop stuff doesn't work very well. So I think it's a maturity thing, probably more than anything, Miguel, is being mature about how to handle those conversations and those challenges, and finding diplomatic and logical ways to navigate those. I think that's just a big thing in my development, my career over the last few years, that, without going through it, I'm not sure I could tell you I would have grown the way I've grown in that.
Miguel, do you find yourself being more diplomatic?
Easier said than done.
You know what? Here's the deal. So Lucas has this preconception. Him and his significant other both have this mission to transform me into a better version of myself, because they believe I'm incredibly explosive. I think, to Tim's point, that I am transforming. And I say it in the sense of maybe emotional intelligence, right? It doesn't, because here's the deal. What I think is when I look at myself before and I was in an academic facility, is it was almost like I didn't really care of what would happen, right? It was a little bit less, because I'm like, if I fuck it up, I'll go to another hospital, right? Or if I fuck it up, I'll get another job. And when you are all in, when your chips are on the table, and you have a bank note or investors or all these other external things that are contingent on your emotional intelligence, on your cognitive performance, you realize that you can't be that way. And so, yes, I probably still need to work on myself, Lucas. There's been a lot of noise, and the reason why we invited you here was, honestly, you've been popping on my LinkedIn feed a lot of times, Jeff, lately because of this. And it's the fact that there is now a percutaneous femoral popliteal graft that can be done essentially on a patient that you would normally send out to do a bypass, an open bypass on, right? And we'll get into the details, but can we, and again, I mean, you may not be able to talk eloquently about this, and we may have to get somebody from the company, but boy, did that seem to me like a big shift on a company that all of a sudden was, for many, many years, doing AAA work, out of the blue comes in and changes direction and starts offering this one thing. And for me, it was something a little bit weird. It kind of felt like, and I'm not bashing the company, right? I mean, this is not negative in any way. This is just like, sometimes you don't understand the business behind it, because we had the CMO of Inari telling us here the other day how they thought picking up lymph flow, a deep venous arterialization thing, was great because they like taking projects for problems that don't have solutions. And so even though you always thought Inari was a company that was clot treating or clot removal, they thought that was an important thing. Now, who knows what Stryker's going to do with them. But it felt like that. It felt like a pretty big shift. And I'm not asking you to tell me what the companies, because I know you're not here to talk on there, but what was that? What did it mean for you as an interventional cardiologist that this company all of a sudden had a solution that was actually great for patients? That potentially there's a lot of patients that could benefit from it. But
how did you like first come to know about it? Yeah, how get involved? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. So, this is the brainchild of Jim Joy. So you guys all know Jim Joy. This is his company. So he started this, I think, maybe in the last decade. And so they've been working on it since then. So this has been an acquisition for them, Jim Joy's brainchild. I got involved, and they ran a clinical trial. We could talk about that a little bit if y'all want to, and what the results over the trial. They came to me after commercial launch. So I don't know if you remember, I was chief medical officer with Avenger, and then Corey Gibbs was their VP of sales. So now he is with Endologics. You remember Corey, great guy. So he's with Endologics, and so him and Sean Penn, as soon as it went commercial, they're like, hey, we got to get you on board. And so they kind of brought me in, and we started our first case in October, and we've done like 12 to 15 maybe now, maybe 30. I think they have 2 more cases coming up next week. So we've done a pretty significant amount of cases, which is compared to like DVA, which you're going to do like maybe one. I know you do a ton of DVA, Miguel, but like a normal guy is going to do one DVA every so and so weeks. But PT bypass, PTAB can be a little bit more of a mainstream. So in 4 weeks, and really we're super duper selective right now with who we're doing. But as we open it up a little bit more, you probably could do a little bit more. Kind of open up the bandwidth for doing these patients as well.
Do you know anything on what was going through the company's C-suite as to why they wanted to? I mean, obviously they had hit a wall in a way with their EVAR technology. There was a lot of heat coming in that direction, and maybe there's an intention of the company to resurface with something that didn't have that much heat. Do you know anything that you can share on that? Or
I would think a couple of things. So, Endologics, I used to use their stent grafts, and it's not. I'm not going to say it's a cardiology company. They obviously tailor to vascular surgery and cardiology, but it's a minimally, low profile, minimally invasive, and I used to use it. It's a cardiology kind of company, and it was a stent graft company, right? Whereas when we do PTAB, also it's a stent graft type of technology. And so I would assume there's some synergy there. I would assume that there's some synergy in the fact that they call on cardiologists and interventional radiologists as well as vascular surgeons. So they have that bandwidth because they're already there in cases with IC and IR. And from my standpoint, I'm not a vascular surgeon. I'm a cardiologist. So that's the one thing I can't do is bypass surgery. So this is the first time this has opened up this world to me. Now, there's still patients that I'm going to send to bypass. We have some awesome surgeons. I love them. Send them some cases. But, in those patients that I feel like, maybe they're not a good candidate for bypass, or they've already failed bypass surgery, or they failed endovascular, they're not good bypass candidates, or, I haven't done endovascular because it's like really heavily calcified, and I'm like, man, this is going to be a disaster with stent regret and do all that other stuff, start with PTAB.
That's an interesting position that I hadn't really thought about it, which is, in a way, this company had already a pretty entrenched relationship, portfolio, if you may, of interventional cardiologists. That part of why there was this uniqueness to them was because they had an incredibly low profile system that was amicable in a time potentially when still a lot of people were cutting down, right? This wasn't too long ago. I mean, I remember during my residency, we would cut down on every single common femoral to put an EVAR in. Lucas, you didn't get that. When you trained, we're already percutaneous.
Yeah.
And then actually some of the cardiologists at Baylor that did a lot of EVAR volume used their endograft. So I saw a couple of those. So yeah, I can see how
I just sized the guy for an AFX the other day because I shared it with you, Lucas. Remember, super tiny aorta, no complicational to put grafts. So it was a one where I thought an AFX main body, and it was kind of distal. I still think there's a huge relevance, but certainly, obviously, they've hit a few bumpy things on the road here and there. But there's a need. I think there's an interesting need for some of these patients. And when I ask you, Lucas, you're a surgeon, but do you think there's sometimes guys that if you could do a fempop in an hour and a half and not have to cut down, you would consider using this particular device?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've
right?
actually, I've been,
Have you done any of these?
I have not done it, but I actually had one.
In where you think that this would, this is exactly where I would consider using it.
I have a couple patients where I have significant difficulty for an endo rescue procedure where somebody fails a bypass. Significant difficulty passing the distal anastomosis from above or below to be able to do a rendezvous. And that is a case where I would definitely think about this. And then the other one, that's a that I think it's totally up the alley is, multiple stents, multiple relines, no vein, then that's a no-brainer. And that is not uncommon these days. That's not uncommon at all.
I think two things for me as a surgeon, because it's also not fun to try to suture into a piece of rock, is when you put that fluoroscopy and you just have a perfect calcium map of everything all the way down, you know that even if you're even in the most skilled and you can cross it, chances are you're going to have to rip the crap out of that subintimal space, rip it, perforate it, and then line it with PTFE graft, right? And then if for some reason some area didn't really open, then part of that PTFE graft is not going to open up. So that's the first one that for me, I think that there's a huge opportunity here. And then the other ones are failed long stented old SFA stents where you've gotten to probably the end of your widths, right? You've maybe opened it, you've lasered it, you've DCB'd it, you've done this and you've done that, and you know that they keep coming back. And at some point you have to give up on that native conduit and you have to do a bypass, and they don't have vein or they're not great candidates for a procedure of high surgical complexity. What do you think has made you guys so successful and have so much solid, good data to shape the way we care for our patients in the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's always being there in the perfect moment and meet the right person. And it was the same for us in Germany, I would say. Yeah, as you mentioned, by that time, 10 years ago, we had a more liberal situation for studies, for new devices, to bring it to the market, to evaluate these devices for endovascular therapies. And so the momentum was great. And I met a person actually in 2013. Her name is Simone Müller. So Simone, if you can hear me, I really would like to thank you, because she's our lead study nurse. And she said, hey, I'm a study nurse and let's do something together. Yeah. And she's so enthusiastic and she's so innovative, and she's from that time on, everything exploded. Yeah, more and more studies came. We are now a team of 8 study coordinators. And it's so much fun with working with them, and so effective. So they all make a great job. So kudos to my team, to my study team, absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, and this is what you mentioned, then we had to shift to a medical device regulation a couple of years ago. And this is unfortunately now changing a little bit. It's getting more and more complex to organize these studies, to bring new devices on the market. I think the way you do it now in the United States is something we definitely need, with the fast track, with the breakthrough ideas. We don't have that. And so we are losing a lot of ground now, especially in evaluating new therapies. And this is really sad to see, really sad to see.
So you've seen so many different, devices, so many different trials. What areas do you think are overdone? It's like, we don't need any more of this. And what areas are we not looking enough into, or what areas do you think we in the future, this is the next big thing in your opinion?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. There's the 1 billion of open questions in the peripheral field, including venous disease. Yeah, what we probably do not need is another stent. Stent is something.
That's what I said. You said atherectomy. I said venous stent. We don't need another one.
We had a bet going in the background.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you think he's going to answer if we ask him, what do we need not more of? And what do we need more of? And I said, he's probably going to say not more atherectomy devices. But you said venous stents.
Yeah, right. So, but I agree. Also, atherectomy devices. There's every week a new startup company bringing a new device on the market. I don't know. It's getting a little bit crowded here. So yeah. So I think that's something. It's okay. It's good to have some new ideas. There's some nuances improving, but there's so many open questions. Why do we still need to amputate? Yeah. Why there are still no option patients? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we avoid this? What can we do from an endovascular therapy and in these patients who have no options? This is the arterial field, but also in the venous field, 1 billion more questions. Patients suffering from post-thrombotic syndrome, we can't revascularize because the inflow is so bad. So what can we do to increase the inflow for these patients, preventing rethrombosis or restenosis of the stents? So billion of questions. I think we are still at the beginning of finding answers. So the next generations will probably do this. But it's great to see that there's still so much effort and intense working and studies trying to answer these questions. And this is great to see. And it's great to see actually in Germany that young people are super interested in this field. This gives a very good feeling that this medical field of vascular and vascular interventions and the vascular procedures, angiology, is still alive, and it's still under improvement and getting better, bringing new generation at the level that they can take over and actually bring everything forward.
I think that one of the things that I think, and I don't know if it's even possible, if there's even a way to do it, but bringing the arterialization into a more proximal geographical area. So, I think I don't know if we have a good answer besides, vein and a bypass for when a patient has like a distal popliteal disease, tibial trunk disease, proximal osteal disease of the tibials. Because an arterialization there is more difficult, I would say technically. And there's, besides a bypass with a vein, there's no really good answer. And sometimes that's not even a good answer. So, that seems to be a problem that is unsolved. Like when I started in 2018, when I went with the cases that made me nervous, where I didn't know, where I couldn't predict what the outcome would be like acute thrombus. And I think with the myriad of thrombectomy devices, like arterial thrombectomy devices, now I'm like, that's not even an issue. It's like an SFA occlusion. I just think about it the same way. I said, I'm going to fix this. This is easy. The ones that I think are like, how am I going to solve this problem, are the distal popliteal tibial trunk patients that don't have a good vein. It's like, okay, how am I going to solve this problem in a meaningful way?
I'm not following this. Like a CP trunk occlusion?
Yeah, like
that's a cheap shot case. What are you talking about?
I'm saying like an
Process
extensive.
stented done.
Okay,
What are you talking about?
You're gonna stent into a tibial?
Well, yeah, you know how bioabsorbable scaffolds
I don't think that the results are that great.
Well, anyway, so I do believe that when we look into this conundrum of arterial and venous, I feel like in venous we're just starting. You
Really?
know, like, yeah, I know. Like these, don't you like? Would you think that the race of technology in arterial and venous is about the same, or do you think that arterial is progressed a little bit more than the venous side overall? Apples to apples, that's our comparison.
Oh, what's the unmet need there?
Well, he just mentioned one that I think is incredibly disabling, that causes a lot of patients harm, which is post-thrombotic syndrome, and you can't do a lot, right? Deep venous reflux or venous occlusions of femoral popliteal and tibial veins is incredibly disabling. And these patients come to you for answers, and you know the problem, and you're like, I can't do anything. Like, yeah, you're gonna get wrapped, and that's all we get. Like, right? I don't. What's your thought on that, Michael?
Yeah, fully agree. And just think of the age of venous patients. They're young. Yeah, they're typically younger, significantly younger than the arterial patients. So they have their life ahead. Yeah, and we really can't help them in the way we would like to do that.
Tell me a little bit about age. How age plays a role, and are there, from this age to this age, focus on this, from here on maybe focus on this other thing, and how do you structure that because there's obviously a different cognitive evolution of every one of these phases, and do you focus on different things based on age?
Yes and no. Because from one aspect, it's like you're introducing two languages, so you would think that something would be different, but it's the exact same way as if a child is being raised in one language. They're still acquiring the languages very similarly. The languages are developed similarly, but the one thing I would say with respect to age is that the earlier you start, the better. So the first year of life is critical. I mean, for so many areas of development. But for language in particular, the phonetic system is developing. And so phonetics is like the smallest sounds of a language. And so from what is it, 0 to 6 months, the first 6 months of a child's life, babies can distinguish all sounds from every language. And what that means is that if they hear a sound, they know that ba sounds different than pa, for example. Even just like the slightest distinction, they will understand that there's a difference, and especially for languages that they don't hear frequently. Then that window starts to close between 6 and 11 months because the child is getting exposed more and more to their native language, whatever their parents are speaking to them. So for, I don't know, my niece, for example, who is only going to learn English growing up, she's only going to hear and learn English from her parents. And from a survival aspect, she doesn't need to understand the sounds of Spanish or French because her parents don't speak them to her. So she's going to fine tune her ears to really understand English sounds. Bilingual children, on the other hand, this universal window stays open until about 18 months. So they're a little bit more flexible because they're listening to more than one language. Not only do they need more time to make these distinctions, but they need more inputs because they are kind of splitting their day, whether it's 50-50 or whatever. They need more input to really categorize, okay, these sounds go with this language and this goes with the other. So if parents can start from birth or within the first year, that's going to really benefit them, not just so that their children sound like native speakers, but so that it makes it makes it easier for the child going forward.
So one thing that I feared when we were starting this, and I feared it because it happened to my cousin. And I guess not fear, but I was expecting. And
Yeah.
I'll change that. It wasn't fear. It was. I remember telling Jenna, my wife, I said, "Listen, when Lucas is born, don't be surprised if he doesn't speak that well for a while." And it's because we're giving him a broader amount of information to pack in. I guess this is my
Mhm.
uneducated way. Um, Tell me if I'm off. And so I'm saying this because my cousin, who is also in his case, it's different because they both speak Spanish
Yeah.
at home, but the kid would go and speak English at right, and so they were not necessarily a bilingual per se, but there was bilingual in the community
Influences,
they
yeah.
would live in, and he's a surgeon out in Arizona. But I remember one of his kids took forever to start. And I remember that they went and seek some professional advice. And I think at the time what they told him is like, come back in a year,
Yeah.
like don't worry, and we'll see each other then. They obviously they did, they tested their ear hearing, everything was fine. And at the time she wouldn't speak. It was just a lot of sounds and whatever. It was really and they were concerned because the first kid didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
And literally today, Stella will not stop talking. That girl can talk your ear off today, right? And so all to
Yeah.
say that it was just a matter of time that her brain needed to understand this, and she can go both sides, right? And now more obviously a whole lot more English than Spanish, but she can still understand it very well. And with Lucas, I was like, this is probably going to happen to us, and I'm going to be ready for that. But this crazy kiddo started talking like a psychopath very early, so it wasn't. But is that something that is that like a thing that maybe this window is open, and maybe that means the kid's gonna seem like he's having trouble and maybe not following a timeline that's expected? Is that something that's a norm?
Not generally. So that's probably the biggest myth with bilingual
Okay.
parenting is that you're introducing two languages and that they're going to get confused and that it's going to delay speech. That is like one of the biggest fear-mongering tactics among, I mean, unfortunately, still speech therapists, pediatricians, they're not in the US, all over the world, still warn parents not to introduce bilingualism. And it's just
Really?
absolutely the opposite. Bilingualism, I'm sorry, were you going to say
No,
something?
wow, I didn't realize that in 2025 people
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it's the opposite. Bilingualism will never cause a speech delay. Bilingual children have speech delays just like monolingual children. Sometimes it is just they need more inputs, they need more encouragement. They need situations where they need to use the language because it's all about demand. If the child doesn't have any demand to use Spanish, they're not going to. They're just going to use English or whatever other language because it's easier. But that's certainly a very big fear for parents.
What is the worst advice you've ever received training, and how did it shape you?
Oh, wow. I should have probably read these before to talk about some answers. What is the worst advice? Probably the worst advice I can remember ever getting is it's just easier to do a major amputation and go home.
Yeah,
That was
disappointing.
point blank. That's what I was told.
Yeah,
Whatever else you do, it's a waste of money and a waste of time.
yeah,
And at the time, I was early in my career, and so I actually thought that I was like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay. And now in retrospect, I look back and I was like, oh my God,
that's horrible.
what an appalling thing to say to advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start. We started dark. Yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, there are attendings out there saying that to both patients and trainees, which is just psychotic.
Yeah. When you have a really difficult case, do you do anything to mentally prepare for it? Like something that's out of your comfort zone?
Oh yeah.
What?
So first thing I do is I go pick up the phone and I call somebody or someone. We have our little chat that we sometimes go to where we upload some cases. Because I always want to get the perspective of somebody else, especially if I'm not sure if my approach is going to be the right one. And then I try to come up with a few different plans that may happen. I guess I constantly think about it. I think about it a lot. It'll keep me up at night when there's a complex case where I'm not sure that I'm doing the right thing or where I'm not sure what the right thing is.
Yeah.
And it just removes, it takes my inner zen out, and I'm just reverberating and on and on and on in my mind, and I'm thinking of things, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night with a pen and I'll write like maybe an idea that came to me, and then I'll go to sleep, because if I don't write it, I can't sleep. When I have these mental thoughts stuck, I can't sleep. And so it's really disturbing. Thankfully, it's not something that
I think that's a good sign.
on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
But when it does, it is really a very, you succumb to this, to the stress, and because there's somebody behind that, right? I mean, you think it could be your family member, it could be yourself, and you'd hope that somebody, if it was me behind that person's hand, you'd hope that they also have a lot of mental processing.
Well, what do you do? Okay, you decided what you're gonna do is pretty it's difficult. Do you do anything to prepare, before you walk, wash your hands and walk in the room?
Oh, like mentally, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I do pray. I pray. I would like to remember to pray every time, but I unfairly, I guess, to God, I normally pray when I'm in deep shit. I think a lot of us do that. And there is that is the one thing that I do love. I'm usually the biggest hater of the hospitals. But on any given night, you may find me in the hospital sanctuary area.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's very peaceful.
Interesting.
If your hospital has like a chapel or
It does.
something?
Yeah, it does.
Have you ever gone?
Yeah.
So I'll
One of our my co-fellow used to go there to sleep when he would call in by Texas Children's multiple times.
Well, it's a very peaceful way to sleep, I guess.
Yeah.
But I go there, for example, I'll mark the patient, and I'll go to the OR, check that everything's moving along. So I know it's going to be, 1 hour before I'm ready. So I'll go, maybe I'll, get a Coke or something and then go to the sanctuary and sit there, just sit there with myself, pray and ask that everything goes well, that I get enlightened and that my thought processes as much as I can. And then I do a potty break and then I go in. That's my routine.
Yeah.
Before the potty break's very important too.
Yeah.
Even if I don't feel, I go and I go and drizzle two drops of pee.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't know why mentally if I don't do that.
That is the definition of TMI, right?
that was what I was saying. I empty my bladder. I do that very. If I'm doing just an angio, I don't.
I'm glad that this is the most important takeaway.
It's an important thing.
You know what
I empty my empty bladder just because I'm going to be there for hours.
Yeah.
So.
You know what I do? My friend Carlos Torres from back home, he was a pretty good swimmer, and his swim coach was Cuban. And he would tell him, just visualize the time that you were striving for before you walk it. So visualize every stride, and then when you hit whatever you hit when you swim, look at the time clock in your mind and just visualize the time you're gonna make. And he told me it worked often. He told me that sometime when I was coming out of fellowship. So then when I had a difficult case, I would just go through it in my mind, every single step. And I thought it actually was pretty good. I would recommend that.
So almost just mentally go through the case.
And just visualize being successful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
And we've talked about this before, but I also think that even if it's something that comes out of left field and you feel that because it either was going to be a planned, very complex case and you're stuck, or it was a straightforward case and it becomes a calamity and you're stuck.
Yeah.
As long as the patient's not bleeding on the table, scrub out.
Yeah.
I'll scrub out in the middle of the case. I'll just say I need a potty break even if I don't. It's just a mental clarity thing. And so you take your lid off. Maybe you go and you change into a pair of scrubs because you may be soaked by then, right?
Yeah.
A sip of water. You sit in the changing room for a second or two. Biologic break if you need to. And then go back in.
Mm-hmm.
And by then it'll sometimes just reset you.
Yeah.
And as long as everything's stable, nobody should give you shit for taking a micro break in the middle of a case. I don't think that there's anything wrong there.
I agree.
So instead of the questions being for me, let's just both answer them.
Okay, cool.
So you throw them out there, then I answer, then you give me your answer.
All right, let's get into, is the vascular board certification process broken or just outdated?
This implies that there's a problem with it.
Yeah.
Is there a problem with it?
I don't know. We talked about we can jump.
I mean, I think what's wrong with it? I think it's a pretty straightforward process. You go to school, you do your tests.
Yeah.
And then you have to sit into a test.
Yeah.
And then you get an oral. I guess the oral part is where there may be some biases. I remember that being, I had people that were a little bit on the older side.
Yeah.
And my answers, I remember very well, did not settle with them.
Yeah.
I knew what they wanted me to say, though. And so I said, what I would do is this. What most people would do is probably this.
Yeah.
And I think that got me through. They didn't really flunk me, but I could tell in their face that it wasn't what they wanted to do, right? I remember it was a carotid with mobile clot or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants you to do an open surgery, right?
Yeah.
And so what I said I'd probably use dual protection. I'd put a MoMA up the external, block the common carotid.
Yeah.
Use some suction thrombectomy, put a distal, and then put a stent, and then do imaging, both intracranial, all this. Now, what I'm pretty sure what you would like me to say is...
You pass your board?
I was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I gave them what they wanted to hear, but I also told them another way of doing things, which you can't...
You would do that?
You can't say that's wrong.
No, but you would do that?
Yeah.
Is that... You have mobile cloud, that's what you would do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if the patient is an appropriately risk patient, I don't see any problem. Why not? You can TCAR a guy. Don't you feel comfortable TCARing somebody if there's mobile clot?
I don't know if that's it right.
And let me back up. It was somebody with a high, bifurcation.
Okay. Yeah.
So the board answer was, you have to bring the mandible down.
ENT? No.
And bring all these people in. Dislodge this guy's face into.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring the carotid down and do all this, right? That's what they wanted me to say. And I was like, no, fuck that. I'm gonna put a proximal protection device. I'm going to suck the clot out. I'm going to put a stent. I'm going to put then a distal protection, and then I'm going to put a stent, and then I'm going to be fine. And by the way, now with these stents, have you used these stents now that have a embolic protection embedded into the stent?
I haven't used it, but
I haven't either, but I am dying to use it because that's
I want to use
brilliant.
it through a TCAR, through like a.
They are developing the TCAR size.
Yeah.
But that's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
And everyone,
So
it's gonna be
one move.
It's gonna be like, you get a stent, you get a stent, you get.
Especially now that they opened that for asymptomatic patients.
Here we go.
But and also in a funny way is like, I never really adopted TCAR, right?
That's crazy. I don't. Why?
Because I'm very good at the old one. And I mean, not old one.
You adopt things.
But what's not easy about transfemoral stenting?
This is so much easier.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Like a tiny little incision. Yeah, you don't have to go through it.
No, it isn't. It doesn't take. The problem is you didn't do enough transfemoral to feel comfortable, and now you've done a shit ton of TCARs, which makes you feel comfortable. I had done probably hundreds of transfemorals when TCAR popped up.
So you don't.
And I was like,
you don't think the arch is an issue?
TCAR is transfemoral stenting for dummies.
Yes.
That's what it is. Okay.
Like anything that makes my life easier, I'll do it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I push the needle. Don't get me wrong. But I never felt that I had the need for TCAR, because if I thought the arch was too complicated, I would just do an open-end arch and they'd be fine.
Whenever Liberation Day happened, what kind of a freak out you had? What was your experience, and what are you thinking now? And how's that going to affect you moving in the future? And how do you think this is going to affect MedTech, if at all?
Timing was everything. I was a little bit lucky in the fact that I built up my initial stocking orders and initial shelf stock prior to Liberation Day. So I had about I had about 6 months worth of inventory and already imported.
Did you think because you thought that this was going to happen?
No, I wish I was that good. I do have to say, though, opening up the U.S. office at the time where we did was in anticipation of just, geopolitical or economic potentially issues in the future. So we opened up the U.S. Office, which allows us to have a port of importing. And so when Liberation Day happened, when the tariffs hit, I have to say I was brutally wrong. I thought MedTech would be would kind of be like left off like it was in 2016. So I immediately had to call my OEM ODM partners and say, yeah, I was pretty much wrong, completely wrong. But I sucked it up and I did that. And then he hit us with a tariff, 30%. Kind of could live with that. But then 48 hours later, he goes to 145%. So do we have a little freak out? Sure. That was my magic 8-ball didn't tell me that was going to happen. So first thing I did was kind of look at, okay, how can I help out our customers? Direct sales, I handle that. I had to eat that. But I have a lot of OEM ODM contracts with some big companies. And so what we did was
explain what those are.
So original equipment manufacturing, it just means that we'll partner up with companies and they'll either say, we love your balloon and we want to private label it as is, and so we can offer that balloon to the company for further processing. Or they might come to me and say, we have an idea, can you help us make a tweak to a balloon and actually design it per our specification. So we offer non-sterile products that continue on to become bioresorbable, platforms. We have bifurcated stem platforms. We have DCB platforms. So they use our balloon as the delivery mechanism. So on those, you're importing non-sterile products. And so what I was able to do by having set up this office in the United States is our internal transfer prices to myself from the headquarters are different than that of just shipping directly to the customer. So tariffs are based on that price of being imported in. So I was able to say, okay, I'm not going to be that asshole that just pushes the cost forward and just passes them through. So I kind of did my best to work with our customers, and I think they appreciated it. So from that standpoint, when the 145% tariff kicked in, yeah, it was brutal. I mean, you should see some of my way bills. You buy a product for
Yeah.
$100,000 and you wind up paying 245,000. So but we have a lot of momentum at BrosMed, and I wasn't gonna let some force majeure derail us. So we stayed the course. Luckily, there was a phone call or two between Chairman Xi and President Trump and the powers that be, and they brought that tariff back down to 30%. I probably had about 6 shipments come through at the 145%. And I worked with our customers to weather that storm. No, what I did was I burned some of the cost and passed through some of the cost and just was very transparent with my customers. And then the ones with the direct sales that I actually bring in and sell for BrosMed, I had inventory. I had never received one shipment at 145% for my product. I just
Okay.
I have received shipment at 30%.
Because
That's
my understanding is that there are these kind of Switzerland-like lots where you can park. Like if you have stuff that's coming,
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't hit the processing dock, it's almost like it could stay in limbo. And those were absolutely full because a lot of people said,
Yeah.
okay, deviate it, put it into that yard where it's still not necessarily American territory. It hasn't really gone through the process,
Yeah.
and they can see what the hell the political storm is to then move them through. Now the 30%, that one's new and it's staying.
Yeah, that one's well, when you ask like today, like it's 30% for China. The
Mm.
tariffs
Okay.
for all the territory or countries are 10% for the most part, but for China, it's a 20% reciprocal, 10% tariff, so total is 30%. I just got a shipment yesterday. It was 30%.
It was
And to your
30%.
point, yeah, there are parking lots. You get every time that a shipment arrives on U.S. soil, you get a call from the freight forwarder or the airway company, and they ask you, do you want it? Because there's a lot of people that are like, send it back because it's too expensive. So you can reject it too. You
You'll
don't
be
have
like, no,
They're
wrong,
like, no, the wrong number.
right.
wrong address.
And
Who
I
you
got
calling?
Where you can
one.
find.
I got one where
No
he's like,
hablo. This is not a Scott.
Yeah.
Mr. Scott not home.
Get it from
No,
China.
no,
Timur
Mr.
dong,
Scott
wo
is not
bumi ba ini
home.
shashama? I don't understand.
Take it
So,
back. Take
um,
it back.
so one guy, this guy Eric, he called. He literally sent me a message. I said, no, okay, we accept it. He called me. He's like, are you sure? I'm laughing. But I think what happens is it's all an overall business decision. A lot of companies have this happening. Like I said, what I've learned is the structures that you're setting up for the future. Obviously, the landscape has changed, and we have manufacturing sites in China, manufacturing sites in Europe, and now my whole thought process is this isn't going to go away. It might change. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
But so we probably do have to have a manufacturing site in the United States. If you really want to play this game and you're going to be a global player, which we are, and you think the United States territory is an important territory, which it is, the biggest market on the world. So I'm probably going to wind up setting up manufacturing here. And it might be a limited manufacturing, as like you're taking a straw and then making it into a sterile product or adding a distal assembly or a proximal hub or something. But as long as you have a major structural change to the product where you're actually converting it from something into something else, you pretty much could label it made in US. So if you bought like a distal assembly and then you still had to put the proximal assembly on and then seal the hub, put a strain leaf, sterilize it, package it, label it, that would still be made in the United States. And so I
But
think
what if
set it
you
up.
bring the precursor from China?
Mhm.
Will that precursor have the 30% tariff?
Yeah, so you minimize that
Okay.
precursor. But there's also drawbacks. Like what we're looking at too is a lot of the products that I bring in get used for clinical trials or destructive testing, because they're
Yeah.
brand new products trying to get FDA approval. And so there's drawback positions where if you can file, you can get up to 99% of your money back from those tariffs if you pass the drawback categorization. So you could show that, hey, I use this for clinicals, or I'm using this for destructive testing to get FDA approval for a regulatory approval. But it's a huge, long process, and I think people are going to try to do it, but I don't know how successful it'll be. But you could get 99% of it back. Plus, there could be reciprocal, or not reciprocal, retroactive discussions where maybe they'll come back and say, that was a period of 1 month. You were hit really hard. We're going to reimburse you a percentage. I don't know. My biggest thing, though, I think if Trump stays the course, he'll offer pretty significant savings to U.S. manufactured companies in the future, and you'll want to play that game. And so I'm right now discussing another facility in Europe, but then I'm like, you know what? Why? Okay, so I get a facility up and running in Europe. This month it's China. The next month he says, screw Europe, you're paying 50%. I'm stuck in the same, feel like a mouse in a little wheel.